So a lot of people ask me, what do you do all day? And I'll tell you what I do. I wake up in the morning, I put a t-shirt on and I talk to advisors. And during that time, they ask questions about their business, about, how they can build this problem, that problem. What should I do about this? In fact, I always tell the funny story about when my little niece was staying with me down in Miami. And after listening to me for about a week, she's like, "What do you do for a living?" She's like, "I want a job like you. All you do is seem to wake up and yell into the computer." I'm like, "Yeah, that pretty well sums it up." And so when we're thinking about what kind of podcast do I think would be interesting for a lot of people, is maybe we should do a summary of a lot of the questions that I get on a regular basis. And I get them both for the advisors that I talk to, but I also get a lot coming in online. And there's really some commonalities that I thought would be a good idea to address and really expand upon them. And then from here, I'm hoping that if you have other questions that might be interesting to your business, we can go there. So to help me, so I'm not just sitting here by myself asking questions of myself, I have my famed producer, Matt Hayes, is going to join me, and he's going to act as my moderator and actually ask me questions. And as somebody who is outside of the financial business, he's also in a unique position to say, why do you do that? As an innocent bystander, he'd be in a better position as opposed to someone who really is in the business all the time. So now let's get straight into these questions. Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. Matt Hayes, thank you as always for joining me on the podcast today.
Great to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
All right. So, Matt, I know that we've got we've collected it from a whole bunch of people, but maybe in order, what are the things that are on people's mind right now?
Well, they're not in any particular order, but I think it's safe to say question number one is probably the question of the year 2025 with, as I am just randomly waving my hands, everything that is going on in the world right now. So markets have been going crazy over the last couple of months. We had an election in Canada. There's a lot going on with tariffs. And I know, not only advisors are wondering what's going on, but their clients are. And I know there's a lot, advisors have been asking you about these conversations. So how can advisors and clients create a plan right now? What can advisors do to create a plan to help clients see through it? What should they be doing? And what maybe should their clients also be thinking about as well right now with everything going on?
Well, you're right, Matt. That's like the number one question. The number one question I get is, what do you think about everything that's going on and what should I be doing about it? And I think it's a very timely question. Certainly up here in Canada, is a very different perspective. They certainly talk about tariffs way more than you would if I was down in the U.S., but that has caused some havoc. It's caused havoc in the marketplace. It certainly caused havoc here in Canada in the Canadian elections. So what should you do about it? The first thing that I recommend advisors do in these times of crisis, and this is just one of many crises that we're going to have to deal with, and those who've been in the business a long time know that there's one a year, whether you need it or not, sometimes two, sometimes three, sometimes one every month. My recommendation has always been the same: over-communicate. You can't communicate enough. There are those advisors that I witness that just wait for people to call in and they only address them one at a time as they are, they address their concern. And once again, nothing wrong with that. However, what I would be doing is I would be as proactive as possible. I would be doing webinars to my clients. I would be inviting them out to even conference calls. I would be inviting money management people to get their perspective on it. In fact, I would be doing everything I can to show and demonstrate very clearly to my clients that I'm on top of this. I understand what's going on. I understand how it's going to affect the portfolios. And if I thought changes would be made or needed to be made, I'd be the first one to call you. There's no need to call me. And by being this very confident, being very upfront, being very, very forward with your communication, the anxiety level of almost everybody goes down. They're like, oh, thank God I have Matt as my advisor, because he understands the issues. He understands what I'm going through and how this may affect me and my anxiety levels around retirement or potential lack of getting to my goals. And he's giving me some actionable items that I can actually do right now. What you don't want to do is be a denier, right? Push it away or, try to do the smoke and mirrors thing where look here because you won't have to worry down here. I think the times like this is what clients want out of us is as much transparency as possible, as much education as possible, and have the confidence that you're doing something about it. And if you can do that, as I said, it sort of dissipates the whole situation. Besides that, if you wanted my real opinion on the whole thing, it's short term, like every big crisis that we've ever seen. It has a short term effect on the market, but long term, we all know we're buying great companies, and great companies will overcome over the long period of time. So as much as it's a great crisis to communicate, unless it's something that is dramatically different this time, and it never is, but in case it is, more than likely people just want to know one thing. Am I going to be okay? And it's our job to assure them that they will, as long as they don't panic. And then that should be helpful.
Yeah, I think the communication key is so important. You and I have talked about how my mom's financial advisor in the United States, I see the communications from his team, and I just roll my eyes every single time because it's just, bought off the shelf prepackaged stuff. And I'm going, okay, great. My mom's portfolio is down a certain percentage and she's half retired now. I like to have a little bit more of an insight into what you're thinking and that we can trust you with our money right now. I think people are just looking for that kind of reassurance that the people that they've hired, the professionals, are on top of it right now.
Well, and actually you make a very good point here. Recycled fund information is not you. Right? You can send information of, your various manufacturers of money management products have this, to your point, stuff that they've packaged and you can send off. But if I'm a client, that's not what I want to hear. If you're my advisor, Matt, what I want to hear is, what does Matt think? What is Matt's opinion about what's going on? Who is Matt talking to, and what's Matt's advice to me? As much as this other stuff is helpful, what I really want confidence in is my advisor is doing what he's paid to do, which is advising me.
I'm sure that is a topic that will be discussed for the months on end going throughout the rest of the year, and we'll probably have more to talk about this as things play itself out, however they do. But let's move on to another topic that you genuinely love talking about. You've done so many solo episodes on it. A great client experience. So what right now is the best way for an advisor to attract new clients in today's world? What's working? What's not? What do you see in the client experience that excites you, or maybe something that you've seen recently or experience in or outside of the financial world that you go, this is something good that people should be keeping an eye on?
No, and again, I get this question all the time because every business owner, every entrepreneur has the one thing in mind. How do I grow my business? How do I get more business? And what is working versus I don't want to spend my money on something and then find out it doesn't work. And really, it comes down to what is it that people remember, right? Our whole objective in a business is to be remarkable. And this comes from a gentleman named Ted Matthews, who wrote, "It ain't the brand, it ain't the logo. Brand, it ain't the logo." So what he said is, how do you make every interaction, or at least enough interactions, remarkable that people will actually go out of their way to tell somebody else about that experience? And I have the privilege of talking to some of the top advisors, not only in Canada, but almost around the world on a regular basis. And I'll tell you the one thing that works almost every time, and that's client appreciation, saying thank you. Thank you for being my clients, and building a community within your client base, giving them a reason to get together, giving them a reason to celebrate, give them a reason and feel that you are the catalyst to being part of something. And it can be very simple or it can be very complex. But I'll give you the simplest example. I was talking to one advisor in a small town here in Ontario, and he was telling me that he did he invited all his clients as a thank you to an Eagles cover band. So he rented out the whole bar and got this Eagles cover band and said, not only are you invited because you're clients, but feel free to bring your friends, families, or neighbors. He had 190 attendees, and the only business that was discussed was, I would like to thank you all for the trust you've placed in me over the years of helping me give you financial advice. Here's the Eagles cover band, whatever they're called. That was it. From that, not only did he get so much repeat business of clients coming in and telling him how much they appreciated that he would put this on for them, he was telling me that he had 10 files on his desk that were all referred to him from people who attended this event that he put on, and each file was worth at least $1 million. So one thing that he did, and then all of a sudden, it basically built half a year's of new business for him all in one event. And I can attest to this. Way back in the dark ages when I was an advisor, I used to tell people I may or may not have been a good advisor, but I was a great entertainer. And we used to do wine and cheese type of events on a regular basis each month. And it became almost a community event. In other words, people would show up not really even knowing what the topic was that we were going to talk about. They just knew that on the first Thursday of every month at the same location, we were going to do a wine and cheese. What I really found out of that is there was almost a community created. People who were there became friends with each other. They started exchanging numbers. They started going out. To this day, and it was 20, even more than 20, it was 25 years later, there are still clients who are friends with other clients who travel together, whose kids have now grown up together, all because we brought them together in one format. So what is the best way to build business? I tell people, build a community around your business. Build it so as much as you're in the advice business, you're as much as the introduction of the community business. Especially in these particular times, we've gone through we went through COVID, we went through lockdown. People are still, in Canada at least, we have the highest number of people working from home in the entire world. What used to be our community was our workplace. Now we're looking for excuses to socialize, to be part of something. My advice is be that reason that people get together and socialize and build that community within your business.
I think it's also safe to say the last time you were a financial advisor is when the Eagles were actually popular too. So
I was going to say, people think it's paperwork is hard now. Oh, way back then, I had to use stone. I had to have the thing chip on stones for people's signatures. So yeah, that was quite a while ago.
It is amazing how just taking that time to bring people together and do something just so simple can create just great returns like that. I absolutely love that. Just making an effort to bring people together, to put a smile on your clients' faces, that just probably helps, in so many ways. And one of my favorite client experiences that a big international brand does is Capital One, the credit card company.
Right.
They have, I love that in about I think 10 cities in the United States. I don't think they've opened any in Canada yet. They have coffee shops that are branded that, where they have you walk in and there's a team of Capital One there. Obviously, if you'd like help with your credit card or sign up for a credit card, they'd be happy to do that. But they also have ATMs for their banking. But they have a coffee shop in there. You can go buy a coffee. If you're a Capital One credit card holder, they give you 50% off your coffee. And people will sit there and do work and they leave you alone. It's not a problem. So here's an international brand that's bringing people together, and you see, other people talking there and all. And is a credit card company that just opened a coffee shop and put their name on it, but it brings people together and it gets people talking, and it's a great way for people to get together. It's, I'm not saying advisors need to go open up a coffee shop and put their name on it, but it probably wouldn't hurt. But maybe if you have room in the front of your storefront there and you're like, what do I need to do with this space? Maybe put that there.
But you nailed it, Matt. It's how are you different? Like every advisor sends stuff out about the markets. Everybody sends economic junk out. Everybody, has meetings for their clients to learn about the markets. Most people don't care. That's why they hired an advisor in the first place, is because they don't care enough to do it themselves. So going down that path is usually not remarkable. It's the same as everybody. Doing an Eagles cover band, it's remarkable. Not many advisors do that, right? Doing a wine and cheese for their clients, doing any kind of events, anything that sets you apart, and using the one, having a cafe instead of being a bank, anything that sets you apart is remarkable. So whenever you hear me talk about client experience, that's more or less what I'm referring to is, what are you doing that's different from everyone else? Like the bar is not that high. Certainly in the Canadian space, the market's not that high to differentiate yourself in this market. And so all you have to do is think about, who is my client and what would they really appreciate and how do I do that?
Let's move on to our next question about hitting a wall in your business. I know you have mentioned that you've been asked a couple times lately about advisors feeling like they've hit a wall in their business, not sure what to do. How do they scale to that next level? Or how do they decide what to double down on that's working, or maybe what to get rid of? When you feel like you're kind of at that plateau and not exactly sure which direction to go to, they want to just kind of maybe sitting kind of in this weird limbo, wanting to make a decision of what direction to go. How does an advisor figure out what to do in that moment and decide what to do?
It's, again, a question that I get all the time. And in fact, I almost say it was almost the number one question, because no matter who you are or what business you're in, whether it's our business or any other business, there's a phenomenon called the ceiling of complexity. When we have done such a great job at building so much complexity around ourselves that there just literally is no time to do anything else except deal with the complexity. In other words, we can't grow. It's hard to be innovative. You're tired all the time. That's another sign. One of the things we used to say is, remember, if you're hit the ceiling of complexity, here's one way to find out. If everyone around you seems stupider than usual, it means you need to do something different. Right? When everybody annoys you, it's time to relook at your business. That's when you know that you've hit the ceiling of complexity. And so, to the point, what should you do? Well, I'll tell you, the number one thing you have to do, and this is the hardest thing for anyone to do, is you have to completely change your business. Like whatever you're doing and whatever made you successful, you got to do something else. And this involves many different things. The first thing that I would ask people to do is back up and ask themselves, who really is your client? Like, who are you really creating value for versus who is just a customer? And this is hard, but you should focus all your attention on who you're creating value for and almost get rid of everyone who is just a customer. Because at the end of the day, the commodity that we have as either entrepreneurs or as people that give advice, the commodity that we sell is time. And if you're spending time with people that you can't really create great value for, you're spending it in the wrong spot. And I'll tell you, that is very, very, very difficult for an entrepreneur to give something out. Right? To get smaller, to grow bigger is a concept that is very challenging. Now, what some advisors do, and some business owners do as well, is they hire somebody to actually manage their small clients. And I would always challenge this thought process. I'm like, let me get this straight. What you want to do is you want to increase your overhead so that you could better manage your least profitable relationship. That's number one. Right? Is just get rid of people that you aren't creating value for and focus on who you can create value for. Get smaller before you can get bigger. Advice number one for scalability. Number two is, how do you reduce complexity? Like, it is one thing, and we all do this. Every entrepreneur starts out with a very simple, very cool little idea. And then all of a sudden, you got more product, more product, more product. And our heart's in the right place when we do this. We think we're going to satisfy more customer needs. We're going to get more customers as a result of this. But the actual opposite is true. Complexity equals more systems, more people, more overhead, and you'll eventually will be unable to manage it without manual interference. The best businesses I know, whether it's Apple or, and that's a great story. Apple at one time had over 135 products, different product lines, by the way. When Steve Jobs came back to revive Apple after he was fired, he dropped that to something like 14 product lines. So he eliminated over 100 product lines, but he said, what we are in, we are going to be the best at. And I would give everyone the same advice. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Don't try to satisfy every need. Don't try to sell every product. Find the people you can create the most value for and simplify that process. So if you can do those two things, that is what's going to get you to your next scale of leverage. That is what's going to break through your ceiling of complexity.
I've been going through this process a lot myself over the last couple of months. You and I have kind of talked a little bit about that offline here. And one thing I noticed, and I've talked to other entrepreneurs who have gone through this shift, is there's almost this, when you can feel that chapter change, you can feel that we're I hate to take a quote from the title of the podcast, but turning the page on a business. There is almost this kind of tough element of letting go of what was, because you might have done something the same way for 10, 20 years, and this is what you've identified yourself with, this is what you've known, but it's okay to kind of let that go, to ask these questions and get excited about what that next chapter would be like and to really embrace it that way.
That's the hardest part. Like, as the saying goes, I have seen the enemy and the enemy is me. It's not that the business is, out of control, or operations are out of control, or compliance are out of control, all the things that we blame on these outside forces in. It's how we've designed the business that is wrong. And so if we could redo it, if we had a blank sheet of paper, and I always ask this question, if you had a blank sheet of paper and start over, what would you do differently? And so now that you know that, what do you need to do today to get back to that, to get to what you originally envisioned? It's a tough process, but everyone that I've worked with that has gone through it ends up to be way happier. They have more freedom. They feel energized at the end of the day. They're not mad at everyone, not everyone around them stupid. It works.
I love that. So for someone that might ask those questions and might have been in the business for a while and they're starting to think, maybe I'm getting older, I want to slow down. I love what I do, but maybe I should be thinking about succession planning. Maybe it's at that time. Maybe it's within a few years down the road. Maybe they just know it's time for a change. You speak to a lot of advisors and get asked this a lot when they're at that moment, at that point in their life and their business going, maybe it's time for that change. What should an advisor be thinking about when it comes to succession planning when they're starting that out, even if they don't even have their intention of selling maybe right now, but maybe within a few years down the road, they're just really starting to think about what this next chapter looks like?
Again, excellent question. When I get a lot, especially in today's demographics, where the entire population who runs our businesses are getting closer and thinking more about those types of things. I always answer sort of the same way. Every business should be started for eventually the same objective, and that is to pass it on to somebody else. Now, that might be a sale to somebody else, but it also might be bringing your kids in, bringing an associate in. But all businesses should be created with the end in mind. And if you had the end in mind, I always ask the question, what makes one business more valuable than another business? And we all know what makes one business more valuable than the other business is how easily it is for somebody else to take it over. I've seen businesses that are built around personalities, egos, larger than life individuals who literally through charisma and sheer determination build a business. And it's so much around them, so much around their processes, so much around, again, their personality, that although they're great businesses for that individual, they're actually terrible businesses for other people. So if you're looking for succession, whether it's now or whether it's 5 years from now or 20 years from now, the thing always to keep in mind is how easy is this business going to be for somebody who is not me to take it over. And great businesses, whether we're talking about, if you watch the McDonald's movie about Ray Rock, if you watch anything about Starbucks and the whole Pike's Place thing, it was all about creating a process that satisfies and creates value for clients that is easily transferable from one person to another. Once again, not an easy thing, especially in a business where it's all about giving advice and personalities and relationships and all of those things. And I understand that. But the more that you can create process and structure and controls around that, the more valuable that business is going to be.
How much of what we talked about in the last question about how do you scale to the next level kind of coincides with that? Maybe someone that feels like they've hit a wall and feels like they have to do everything and realizes they need to change their systems and all, so that way they kind of get a little bit back more of their time. When they do that, don't they then make their own business then valuable then to be able to sell off to somebody else at that point? That you can kind of kill two birds in one stone with that process.
Absolutely. The principles of business never change. It's all about simplicity and being able to scale that simplicity and at the same time create unique value for a specific client base. Like that's business 101, whether it's our business, whether it's your business, the podcast business, whether it's the coffee business, the hamburger business, or the, steakhouse business. They're all the same. If you need to get to that, the easier they are to run, the simpler the concept, the more value that people can think about how this is creating for them, whether it's convenience, whether it's great coffee, whether it's good steak, whether it's a well production on your podcast. The product is clearly solving a problem that they have to a specific market. Now, how do you tie all the systems and processes so it doesn't have to be you that runs it all the time? That's the secret of business. It's also, by the way, the secret of happiness, because a business that only relies on you is one that is like a big job, right? You can't go away for a month and, travel around when the business is all around your decisions. The best businesses are ones where you're free, it develops cash flow, creates great value for your clients, and at the same time creates equity value for you and your family at the end.
So speaking of equity value and what a business might be worth, for those that are sitting down that with you and start talking about succession planning, and are at that stage where they're ready to go or they're starting to put things together. One question you seem to get a lot too is knowing what the value of their book is. Right. How does an advisor start figuring that out, knowing what they can get for their business, and how do they then figure out if they know they have enough to be able to retire?
The valuation of businesses, again, is not it's not a big mystery. They're all a factor of cash flow. Yeah, a business is not worth very much. It might be 2 times cash flow because it's very hard to replicate. It's going to be very expensive for someone to take it over. It's very expensive to put their own people in place. Whereas a great business might be 3 to 3.5 times cash flow because it's a well-oiled machine. It's very simple to operate. It's easy to transfer from one person. And then there's the factor of profitability. Is the business profitable? In other words, has it hit scale? So again, a $25 million book is going to be worth less than a $100 million book, which is also going to be worth less than a $250 million book. So in other words, is there scale? Because scale usually indicates that there is systems and processes and all those things in place. And so that's about what you're talking about. There's the main factor always is ongoing cash flow and the multiple of cash flow. What changes is the multiple. The cash flow, theoretically you have control over, but the multiple that someone will give you is once again in direct proportion to how easily somebody else can take that business over.
So, Chris, we dug into a lot today, and thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know these are a lot of questions that you get and from advisors every single day. But if there was one thing that you could leave advisors with right now, one question they could ask in their head and think about here after they're done listening and maybe start thinking about no matter what stage in their businesses they are in right now, what question should advisors be asking themselves about their business right now?
The question that I always try to ask, and I certainly encourage every entrepreneur and every advisor to ask, is the same question that Warren Buffett asks of all the people who run all his conglomerate of businesses. What are we doing to delight our clients on a regular basis, right? And, If you have to pause and think about that, then you know you don't have a good answer. But if you can right off the bat know how you are delighting your target clients on a regular basis, as Warren Buffett would ask you if he walked into your office, if you're able to put that off your head, you have yourself a good business and you have yourself a lot of happy customers.
And I know that's something you'd be happy to chat with advisors if they want to schedule a virtual coffee with them. So why don't you tell us about that and what that's like?
Well, this is, again, I spent a lot of my time just talking through some of these things and how to implement it into people's actual businesses. So if anybody wants to have a virtual coffee with me, I have lots of them all week, and it's what I enjoy doing more than anything. Just go to the show notes, hit the link, and, there's a place there that you can set up a coffee with Chris. And happy to do that.
This was fun. Thanks for having me on, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. We're going to have to do it again because I'm sure that there's lots more questions out there.
We'll definitely do it again. Thanks so much.
All right. Cheers, Matt. Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over a virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.